Thank you, Father Norfolk, Father Kelly, Reverend Fathers, beloved sisters, virtuous business leaders, any other honored guests, and of course, my dear, dear brothers. I'm beyond grateful for the many priest heroes the Lord has blessed me with, all of whom have exhibited their priesthood to me in truly heroic ways, and many of whom are here with us in this chapel tonight. With that being said, tonight I have the privilege of honoring as my priest hero Father Larry King from the Diocese of Grand Rapids. Father Larry is a retired priest of the diocese and my former pastor. He's also the first Catholic priest I ever met. So in many ways, my experience of who a priest is and what a priest does has always been informed by my experience of who Father Larry is and what Father Larry does. I could try my best to pinpoint and specify what sort of clear-cut virtues Father most exemplified, but instead I'd simply like to share 3 ways he has touched my life and heart. My hope is that through these short stories, I can simply gesture at the heart through which I saw the Father's love so clearly. So the first story happens when my family was looking to rejoin the Catholic Church. My parents had been away from the church for a while, and we had been Methodist. So my 2 sisters and myself had all been born, raised, and baptized Methodist. And my parents were feeling the Lord calling them back into the church, back to the sacraments, back to Mass, and but there was obviously some hesitancies. We had a great community at the Methodist Church, a lot of fantastic friends there, and so it was hard to leave that. And then also my parents didn't want to do anything too abrupt that might shake up the faith in my 2 sisters and I. We were still very young at the time, and they were afraid that so big a change might impact our faith in the Lord. So they sat down and they had a meeting with Father Larry, and obviously I was not present at the meeting at the time. I was in 3rd grade, and so all of this is secondhand, but we did end up joining the Catholic Church after that conversation. We came back to the church, and what I remember my parents telling me over and over again about that meeting, about that conversation, was how kind Father Larry was. How kind he was, how gentle, how understanding he was of our situation, of our hopes and our fears, and how much he loved us with just a pastoral heart. My mom often said that if it had been any other priest in that meeting, she doesn't know if he would have done it. She doesn't know if he would have joined the church if it had been any other priest but Father Larry. And if we had not joined the church, then a lot of things about my family's life and about my own life just would not have happened. So in that very specific, particular instance, the Lord used Father Larry to love my family in the way that we needed to be loved. The second short story I'm just going to offer tonight is from my first confession. This was right after we joined the church. I was about 3rd grade, as I said, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I had no idea what confession was. I knew that I went in and I told my sins and they were forgiven. And so I'm sitting there in the pew, my palms are sweaty, my heart's hammering out of my chest, and that little green light flits from red to green. And I said, oh, it's time, you know. So I stood up, I kind of shuffled my way over to the confessional, sat down, made the sign of the cross, and then basically word vomited for about 5 minutes. And then the whole time, Father Larry was just sitting there, kind of smiling gently, just listening to me ramble on about everything I'd ever done wrong and how sorry I was and how I'd never do it again. I promise, promise, promise. And he basically said nothing. At least I don't remember anything he said. That maybe it was just my own state at the time. But and then it came time for absolution. And what I remember, I've never seen a priest do this ever since. But he reached out and he put his hand on my head. So it was like that. I mean, I was pretty young. My neck was pretty weak. So he was like weighing my head down as he prayed the prayer of absolution. And when he said, "I absolve you," he lifted his hand off. And there was this. It felt so light. There was this weight that was lifted off me, and. Which, I mean, obviously yes, because he was holding my head down with his hand, and then he released me when he said those words. But I think he did that to convey what spiritually was going on at the time, which for me, first time not knowing anything, was just very, very powerful. Because as I felt that physically, I also felt it in my heart spiritually. And I've never forgotten that. And that always has informed how I see the sacrament of confession. And started to inform how I saw priests, because they could do that. And that was amazing to me, still is. So that's the second story. Third story I'd like to share is how Father Larry began to inspire my vocation. So this is after a confession several years later. I was in the confessional with him. I just told him my sins. And before he absolved me, he said, "Jeff, you've got a good heart. You've got a priest's heart." And then he started the prayer of absolution. And I was just sort of stunned. I wasn't really sure what to think. And ever since then, whenever he saw me, he'd just call me Father. So I'd be like walking into the sacristy to altar serve, and he'd say, "Oh, Father, good to see you." And I'd like do a double take, because, that's what I'm supposed to call you. And it got me thinking and praying about it. And obviously, here we are. But so it worked. But ever since then, I've been thinking about, a priest's heart. What does that mean, to have a priest's heart? Is that different from having a father's heart? It's obviously related in some ways, but also, I'm sure, distinct. So the priestliness of this heart, whatever it is, that Father Larry saw in me that day, in which I was privileged to see in him throughout my whole time knowing him, I still think and pray about that. A priest's heart. What does it mean to have a priest's heart? Finally, I'd just like to mention that Father Larry still reaches out to me. About once a semester, I'll get an email from him just checking in on me, seeing how I'm doing. A man who loves his children. All in all, Father Larry King is my priest hero, because he showed me what the Father's heart looks like and what it means to have a priest's heart. So for his heart, through which I caught a glimpse of the Father's, I say praise be Jesus Christ.